Princess Zareth sat in the grand library of the Veltari Palace, her blue skin glowing softly in the afternoon light. The ancient books around her were filled with old stories and legends from across the galaxy. Today she was reading about the most famous legend of all, the Terra Warriors. "These humans sound impossible," she said to her teacher, Elder Vorn. "The book says they can survive in any environment, says they never give up, even when facing death. How can this be true?" Elder Vorn shook his gray head. "Princess, these are just stories. No species could be so strong. The humans, if they even exist, are probably just another peaceful race like the others. The galaxy has no place for such warriors anymore." Zareth turned the page and read more. The book described humans who could heal from terrible wounds, who could fight for days without rest, who could adapt to any planet's conditions. It seemed like fantasy to her logical mind. But Elder, what if the stories are real? What if there really are humans out there who are this strong? Child, you have been reading too many old tales. Focus on your studies of diplomacy and trade. These are the skills you need to rule our empire one day. 3 days later, Princess Zareth was traveling to the outer colonies in her luxury cruiser, the Star of Veltar. She loved these trips because they let her see the real galaxy beyond the palace walls. The ship was beautiful, with crystal windows and golden halls, but it was not built for fighting. Princess called Captain Roth from the bridge. "We are approaching the Korth territory border. All ships must be careful in this area." Zareth nodded. She knew about the Korth. They were raiders who attacked merchant ships and took prisoners to sell as slaves. The Veltari Empire had been fighting them for years, but the Korth were too fast and knew how to hide in the asteroid fields. "Captain, how many guards do we have on board?" she asked. 12 royal guards, Princess. They are well trained and have the best weapons. Nothing will happen to you." The Star of Veltar was flying through empty space when the attack came. Red plasma bolts suddenly filled the darkness around them. The ship shook violently as enemy fire hit their shields. "Korth raiders!" Captain Roth shouted. 6 ships, coming from the asteroid field. Zareth watched through the window as the ugly Korth ships closed in. They looked like metal insects, all spikes and weapons. The royal guards ran to their positions, but everyone knew their small force could not fight 6 raider ships. "Princess, get to the escape pods," Captain Roth ordered. The Korth ships fired special weapons that stopped the Star of Veltar's engines. The beautiful cruiser could not move or fight back. Within minutes, the raiders were boarding. The ship, the royal guards fought bravely, but the Korth were bigger and stronger. They stood 8 feet tall with thick gray skin and 4 arms. Each Korth warrior carried plasma rifles that could cut through metal. One by one, the guards fell. Princess Zareth was captured and taken to the Korth flagship. Huge beast named Grux looked at her with red eyes. "A Veltari princess," he said in a rough voice. "Your empire will pay much gold for your return. Or maybe I will sell you to the slave markets. You will bring a good price." They took her to a prison asteroid hidden deep in the asteroid field. The base was carved inside a giant rock, with tunnels and chambers everywhere. Zareth H. was put in a small cell with energy bars that would shock her if she tried to escape. For 2 days she sat in the dark cell, hoping her father's ships would find her. The Korth guards laughed at her and brought her terrible food. She heard other prisoners crying in nearby cells. On the 3rd day, something strange happened. The asteroid base shook as if something had hit it. Alarms began to sound throughout the tunnels. "What is happening?" Zareth H. asked a guard. "Nothing for you to worry about, Princess," the guard said. "It's probably just a small meteor." But the shaking continued. Then came a sound that made all the Korth nervous, the crash of metal against rock. Something had landed on the asteroid, and it was not a meteor. The guards ran to check what was happening. Through the prison bars, Zareth could hear them talking in their rough language. They sounded confused and worried. "Unknown ship," one guard said, "small escape pod. But the markings are strange." "Where did it come from?" another asked. "Unknown. The pod is damaged. Looks like it traveled very far." Zareth pressed her face against the bars, trying to hear more. "An escape pod?" Maybe it was a rescue ship from her father's fleet. Hope filled her heart. But then she heard something that made her blood run cold. The guards were laughing. "Only one life form in the pod," a guard said. "Some kind of alien. Small and weak-looking. Should we capture it?" "Why? It is no threat. Let it come. We will have some fun before we feed it to the void." The laughing stopped suddenly. The guards' voices became worried. "Where did it go?" one asked. "It was right here a moment ago. Search the tunnels." How can one small alien disappear so? Quickly, the next few minutes were filled with strange sounds. Zarath heard the guards running through the tunnels, shouting orders. Then came sounds of fighting, not the plasma blasts she expected, but the sound of metal hitting metal, of bodies falling. "Impossible," she whispered to herself. "One alien against all these Korth warriors?" The fighting sounds grew closer. She heard Korth voices crying out in pain and surprise. Whatever was happening, it was not going the way the raiders expected. Then the lights went out. In the darkness, Zarath heard footsteps coming toward her cell. They were not the heavy steps of Korth boots. These steps were lighter, more careful. She pressed back against the wall, not knowing if rescue or death was coming. A light appeared in the tunnel. It was a small hand light, and behind it was a figure she had never seen before. It was smaller than a Korth, about the same size as a Veltari, but different. The skin was pale pink instead of blue, and the body looked fragile compared to the thick Korth warriors. The figure came closer to her cell. In the light, she could see its face clearly for the first time. It had 2 eyes instead of the Korth's 4, and no scales or thick skin. This creature looked almost delicate, but there was something in its eyes that made Zarath's heart race. They were not the eyes of a weak creature. They were the eyes of a hunter. "Princess Zarath," the figure said in perfect Veltari language. "My name is Marcus Chen. I am from Earth. I am here to get you out." Zarath stared at him in shock. The legends she had read about in the palace library suddenly seemed very real. This was a human, a Terra warrior. They did exist. And now she was about to find out if the impossible stories were true. Marcus Chen pulled out a small device and aimed it at the energy bars of Zarath's cell. Blue sparks flew as the bars shut down. The princess stepped out, still staring at this strange human who had appeared like magic. "How did you do that?" she asked. "Those bars are Korth military grade. It should be impossible to break." Marcus smiled and put the device away. "Nothing is impossible. You just need to understand how things work. Korth technology is strong, but it has weak points. Every system does." As they moved through the dark tunnel, Zarath noticed something amazing. Marcus walked without making any sound, even though the floor was covered with loose rocks. His movements were smooth and careful, like a hunting cat she had seen on her home planet. "Where are the guards?" she whispered. "Sleeping," Marcus replied quietly. "They will wake up in a few hours with bad headaches, but they will be fine. You defeated 12 Korth warriors without killing them." "I try not to kill unless I have no choice. There are usually better ways to solve problems." They reached a junction where 3 tunnels met. Marcus stopped and listened carefully. His head turned slightly, and Zarath realized he was hearing things she could not hear. After a moment, he pointed to the left tunnel. "That way leads to the main power center," he said. "We need to disable their communication system so they cannot call for help." "How do you know the layout of this base?" Zarath asked. "You just arrived." "I studied the asteroid from outside before I landed. Rock formations tell stories if you know how to read them. Plus, Korth bases always follow the same basic design. They're good fighters, but not very creative builders." Well, as they moved deeper into the base, they heard voices ahead. Marcus held up his hand for Zarath to stop. He pulled out a small mirror and used it to look around the corner. 6 guards in the power room," he whispered. "They are alert now. Someone must have found the others." 6 guards with plasma weapons," Zarath said. "We should find another way." Marcus shook his head. "No other way to the communication system. We go through them. But you only have that small weapon. They have plasma rifles that can cut through metal walls. Princess, let me show you something about humans. We do not always win because we are stronger. We win because we think differently. Marcus reached into his pack and pulled out several small metal objects. They looked like simple tools, but he began connecting them together in ways that made no sense to Zareth. "What are you making?" she asked. "A solution," he said. "In human military training, we learn that every problem has an answer. You just need to be creative." He finished building his device and attached it to the wall. Then he pulled out another tool and began working on the power cables that ran along the tunnel ceiling. "In 30 seconds, the lights in that room will go out," he explained. "Korth eyes need more light than human eyes. When they cannot see, they will be confused, but there are 6 of them. Even in the dark, they might hit you with random shots. They might, but they will not hit what they cannot predict." The lights went out. Immediately, loud Korth voices filled the darkness as the guards shouted in confusion. Marcus moved forward so quickly that Zareth almost lost sight of him. What happened next seemed impossible to her. In the darkness, she heard the sounds of the fight, but it was not what she expected. Instead of plasma blasts and explosions, she heard quick movements, the sound of metal hitting metal, and surprised Korth voices. When emergency lights came on 2 minutes later, all 6 guards were lying on the floor, unconscious. Their weapons were scattered around the room, and Marcus was calmly working at the communication console. "How?" Zareth asked, looking at the defeated guards. "How did you move so fast in complete darkness?" "Humans evolved as hunters," Marcus explained, while his fingers moved over the controls. "Our eyes work better in low light than most species. Realize also, I have been in many dark places. You learn to trust your other senses. But 6 armed guards. We're thinking like guards, not like fighters. They expected an attack from the front, so I came from above." They grouped together for safety, which made them easier targets. They tried to use their size advantage in a small room, which actually worked against them. Zareth watched as Marcus shut down the communication system with simple button presses. "You understand Korth technology? I understand the basic principles. Most communication systems work the same way across different species. The universe has certain rules that everyone must follow." Suddenly, alarms began sounding throughout the base. Red lights flashed in the tunnels, and Zareth could hear many footsteps running in their direction.
Ow.
"They know we are here," she said. Marcus nodded and picked up one of the plasma rifles. "Time for the next lesson about humans, Princess. We are very good at adapting to changing situations." The first group of Korth soldiers appeared at the tunnel entrance. There were 8 of them, all carrying heavy weapons. They expected to find easy targets. Instead, Marcus had turned over metal tables to create cover. He had positioned himself where the narrow tunnel entrance forced the attackers to come at him one at a time instead of all together. "Surrender, human," shouted the lead Korth. "You cannot fight all of us." "Watch me," Marcus replied calmly. The battle that followed taught Zareth that the old legends had actually been too modest about human capabilities. Marcus did not just fight the Korth soldiers, he out-fought them at every step. When they tried to rush him, he used their own plasma blasts to damage the tunnel ceiling, causing rocks to fall and block their advance. When they tried to circle around, he had already moved to a new position that covered all the exits. Most amazing of all, he seemed to know what they would do before they did it. Every time the Korth tried a new attack strategy, Marcus was already ready with a counter-move. "Impossible," the Korth commander shouted. "No single warrior can defeat trained soldiers." "You are thinking about this wrong," Marcus called back. "You are not fighting one warrior. You are fighting someone who has studied war for his entire life, who has learned from the battles of 1,000 generations." The fight continued for 20 minutes. When it was over, all the Korth soldiers were defeated, and Marcus had only minor burns on his arms from plasma blasts that had come too close. Zareth stared at him as he checked his wounds. The burns should have been agony, but he treated them like small scratches. "The legends were true," she whispered. "Humans really are what the stories said." Marcus looked at her with those calm, intelligent eyes. "Princess, the legends you heard were just the beginning. You have not seen what humans can really do when we need to protect someone important." As if to prove his point, the entire asteroid base shook with a massive explosion. Through the walls, they could hear the deep voice of the Korth commander. Over the base's speakers, "Human, I am tired of these games. I've activated the base's self-destruct system. In 10 minutes, this entire asteroid will explode. Cannot save yourself and the princess. Choose which one of you will die." Marcus calmly picked up his pack and checked his equipment. "Well, princess, looks like it is time for the real test." Zareth felt her heart sink. Even a legendary human warrior could not stop an exploding asteroid. But when she looked at Marcus's face, she saw no fear or defeat. Instead, she saw the same calm confidence he had shown throughout their escape. Whatever impossible solution he was thinking of. She realized she was about to witness something that would change her understanding of what was possible forever. 10 minutes to explode," Marcus said calmly, as if he was discussing the weather. "That gives us enough time." "Enough time for what?" Zareth asked, trying to keep the panic out of her voice. "Even if we reach the hangar, all the ships will be destroyed when the asteroid explodes." Marcus was already moving through the tunnels, but not toward the hangar. He was heading deeper into the base. "Princess, have you ever heard of something called thinking outside the box?" "No. What does that mean?" "It means not accepting the choices someone else gives you. The Korth commander thinks we only have 2 options, save you or save me. But humans are very good at finding third options." They reached a section of the base Zareth had never seen before. The walls here were different, not carved rock, but metal panels with strange symbols. "This is the original mining equipment," Marcus explained. "Before the Korth turned this asteroid into a base, it was a mining station. These old machines are still here." He opened a panel and studied the controls inside. The writing was in an ancient galactic language that most species had forgotten. But Marcus seemed to understand it. "How do you know this old language?" Zareth asked. "Humans are good at learning languages. When you travel in space, you meet many different people. We study their words, their cultures, their ways of thinking. Knowledge is a weapon that never runs out of power." Marcus's hands moved over the controls with surprising speed. The old mining equipment began to hum with power. Lights that had been dark for years started to glow. "What are you doing?" Zareth asked. "Changing the rules of the game. The Korth commander thinks he controls this situation. But he forgot that this asteroid was not always his." The floor began to shake, but this shaking was different from the explosions they had heard earlier. This was steady, rhythmic, like a giant heartbeat. "The mining equipment is designed to break asteroids apart," Marcus explained. "But it can also be used to push them. Physics works the same way everywhere. In the universe, you are going to move the entire asteroid? Not move it, aim it." Zareth stared at him. "Aim it at what?" Marcus pointed to a screen that showed the space around them. In the distance, she could see several Korth ships waiting. They were staying far away, expecting the asteroid to explode and destroy any evidence of their attack on a Veltari princess. "Those ships contain the raiders who attacked your cruiser," Marcus said. "They think they are safe out there. But if we aim the asteroid at them, we will still be on it when it explodes." "Will we?" Marcus smiled and continued working on the controls. "Princess, let me teach you something about human engineering. We do not just build things to work. We build them to work better than expected." Led her to another section of the mining station. Here, hidden behind old equipment, was something that made Zareth's eyes widen. It was an escape pod, not a Korth pod, but something much older and more advanced. "The original miners built this as an emergency escape system," Marcus explained. "They knew that working in space was dangerous, so they prepared for the worst." "But will it still work after all these years?" Marcus was already checking the pod systems. "Human engineers have a saying, if it is not broken, do not fix it. But we also have another saying, always have a backup plan." The pod systems came online, showing green lights across the control panel. Marcus nodded with satisfaction. The miners who built this were smart. They used simple, reliable technology that would last for decades. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. They could hear the Korth commander's voice over the base speakers again. 8 minutes, human. You cannot escape. Accept your fate. Marcus spoke into the communication system. Commander, let me ask you something. Have you ever studied human history? What? Why would I care about your primitive history? Because humans have been in impossible situations before. We have learned that the word impossible usually just means no one has tried the right approach yet, Marcus finished, programming the mining equipment and sealed the escape pod. Through the pod's window, Zareth could see the Korth ships in the distance, waiting for the explosion. They have no idea what is coming, Marcus said. They think like raiders, grab what you can and run. But humans think like chess players. We plan several moves ahead. What is chess? Zareth asked. It's an old human game. You have different pieces on a board, and you try to capture the other player's king. But the best players do not just think about their next move. They think about what will happen 5 or 10 moves later. The asteroid shook again as the mining equipment pushed it toward the Korth ships. The raiders were probably confused, watching their target move toward them instead of exploding in place. Marcus, can I ask you something? Zareth said as they waited in the pod. Of course, Princess. The stories about humans said, you never give up. But why? What makes you keep fighting when everything seems hopeless? Marcus thought for a moment. That is a good question. I think it is because humans learned long ago that giving up is the only way to guarantee failure. If you keep trying, you might find a solution. If you give up, you definitely will not. But do you not feel fear? When you faced all those Korth soldiers, were you not afraid? Oh, I was terrified, Marcus admitted. Fear is not the problem. The problem is letting fear make your decisions for you. Humans feel fear just like everyone else. We just do not. Let it stop us from doing what needs to be done. The asteroid was picking up speed now, aimed directly at the largest Korth ship. Through the pod's communication system, they could hear the raiders panicking as they realized what was happening. Impossible, the commander shouted. How can they control a mining asteroid? 5 minutes to explosion, Marcus said calmly. Time to go. He activated the escape pod's launch system. The pod shot out of the asteroid just as the Korth ships began trying to move away from the approaching destruction. But they were too late. The asteroid, now a massive guided missile, was moving too fast for the heavy raider ships to escape. The explosion, when it came, lit up the entire asteroid field. From their pod, Zareth watched the destruction of the Korth raider fleet. It was amazing and terrible at the same time. You destroyed an entire fleet with mining equipment, she said in wonder. I used tools that were already there, Marcus corrected. The key is understanding that every problem contains the materials for its own solution. You just need to see them differently. Their pod's emergency beacon was all ready, broadcasting a rescue signal. Soon Veltari ships would find them. Marcus, may I ask you one more question? Yes, Princess. How do humans learn to think like this? How do you see solutions where others see only problems? Marcus looked out at the stars through the pod's window. We practice. On Earth, we have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When humans need to survive, we find ways to survive. When we need to win, we find ways to win. And when you need to save a princess, Marcus smiled, we find ways to save princesses. As rescue ships appeared in the distance, Zareth realized that meeting this human had changed her forever. The legends were true, but they had missed the most important part. Humans were not just strong in their bodies. They were strong in their minds, their spirits, and their refusal to accept that any situation was truly hopeless. She could not wait to tell her father what she had learned. The rescue ships arrived just as Marcus had predicted. 3 sleek Veltari cruisers emerged from hyperspace, their blue hulls gleaming in the starlight. Princess Zareth felt relief wash over her as she saw the familiar ships of her father's fleet. This is Admiral Keth of the Imperial Navy, came a voice over the communication system. Princess Zareth, are you safe? I am safe, Admiral, she replied, thanks to my rescuer. Through the pod's window, she could see the Admiral's flagship approaching, but something was wrong. The ship's weapons were charging and targeting systems were locking onto their small escape pod. "Princess, who is with you in that pod?" "Admiral," Korth asked, his voice suddenly cold. "His name is Marcus Chen. He is a human from Earth. He saved my life." There was a long silence. Then the Admiral spoke again, and his words made Zaratha's blood run cold. "Princess, step away from the alien. We have reports that humans are dangerous warriors. We cannot allow such a creature near the royal family." "Admiral, you do not understand," Zareth protested. "He is not dangerous to us. He risked his life to save me. Princess, please move to the far side of the pod. We will transport you to safety and deal with the humans separately." Marcus had been quietly listening to this conversation. Now, he spoke for the first time. "Admiral, I understand your concern. You want to protect your princess. That is good. I want the same thing. Human, you will surrender yourself for questioning. Any resistance will be considered an act of war." Marcus looked at Zareth with those calm eyes she had come to trust. "Princess, what do you want me to do?" Zareth felt anger rising in her chest. After everything Marcus had done, after all the impossible things she had witnessed, her own people were treating him like an enemy. "Admiral Korth, I order you to stand down your weapons," she said firmly. "This human is under my personal protection. Princess, with respect, you do not understand the danger. These creatures are unpredictable. The old stories say they are savage fighters who cannot be trusted." "The old stories are wrong," Zareth shouted. "Admiral, I have seen what humans are really like. They are not savage. They are brilliant." But Admiral Korth was not listening. Targeting systems on his ship were fully locked onto their pod. Now Zareth realized with horror that he was actually planning to fire on them. Last warning, human. Surrender now, or face the consequences. Marcus sighed quietly. "Princess, it seems your people have already made their choice. Sometimes fear makes people do foolish things." "What are you going to do?" Zareth asked. "What?" "I have to do to keep you safe." Marcus's hands moved over the pod's controls with the same calm efficiency she had seen in the asteroid base. But this time, he was not trying to escape or hide. This time, he was preparing to fight 3 Imperial Navy ships with nothing but a tiny escape pod. "Marcus, this is impossible," Zareth said. "Those are warships. They have shields, armor, weapons that can destroy planets." "Yes," Marcus agreed.
"Oh.
"But they also have weaknesses. Every system does, remember?" The first plasma blast from Admiral Korth's ship missed their pod by inches. Marcus immediately began flying in a pattern that seemed random but somehow avoided every shot. "How are you doing that?" Zareth asked, watching the deadly light show around them. "Physics," Marcus replied. "Large ships have trouble tracking small, fast targets. Computers predict where we will be based on where we have been. So I make sure we are never where they expect." The second ship joined the attack, and now 2 sets of weapons were firing at their tiny pod. But somehow, Marcus was still avoiding every blast. "This is Admiral Korth. Human, you cannot run forever. Surrender now and save the princess." Marcus activated the pod's communication system. "Admiral, I am not running. I am teaching." "Teaching what?" "Teaching your princess what humans really are. Teaching you why fear is a poor basis for military decisions." As if to prove his point, Marcus suddenly changed direction and flew directly toward Admiral Korth's flagship. The massive ship tried to track him, but its own weapons could not turn fast enough. "Impossible," Admiral Korth shouted. "No pilot can fly like that." "Human pilots can," Marcus said calmly. "We have been flying dangerous machines since before. We left our home planet. We learned to make impossible turns, to fly through storms, to land on worlds that should destroy us." He was now flying so close to the flagship that its weapons could not target him without hitting their own ship. The other 2 cruisers were afraid to fire because they might hit their admiral. "Princess, are you seeing this?" Marcus asked as he performed another impossible maneuver. "I see it, but I do not understand it," Zareth replied. "Your admiral made the same mistake that Korth made. He thought about weapons and armor and shields. But he forgot about the most important part. Of any fight? What part? The person making the decisions? Marcus suddenly accelerated away from the flagship and flew toward the nearest asteroid. Admiral Keth's ships followed, all firing at once. But Marcus was leading them into the asteroid field, where their large ships could not maneuver easily. He is using the asteroids as cover, Zareth realized. More than that, he is using our own fleet's size against them. Those ships are powerful, but they are too big for this kind of fighting. For 10 minutes, Marcus led the 3 warships through the asteroid field in a deadly game of chase. Not once did their weapons come close to hitting the small pod. Instead, the Imperial ships began bumping into asteroids and each other as they tried to follow impossible flight paths. Finally, Admiral Keth's voice came over the communication system again. But this time, he sounded different. Less angry, more thoughtful. Human, you could have destroyed us several times during this chase. Why did you not? Because, Admiral, I do not want to fight you. I want to protect Princess Zareth H. That means protecting her from her enemies and protecting her from her friends making mistakes. What do you mean? Marcus brought their pod to a stop in the middle of the asteroid field. All around them, the 3 Imperial ships also stopped, their weapons no longer targeting the pod. Admiral, you were about to fire on your own princess because you were afraid of me. Fear made you forget your duty. That is exactly what enemies want, for good people to fight each other instead of working together. There was a long silence. Then Admiral Keth spoke again, his voice much quieter. Human, what do you want from us? I want you to listen to your princess. She has learned something important about humans, something that could help your empire. Princess Admiral Keth said, "Please explain what you have learned." Zareth took a deep breath. Admiral, humans are not the savage warriors from the old stories. They are something much more valuable. They are teachers. Teachers can show us how to solve problems we thought were impossible, how to win fights we thought we could not win, how to survive situations that should destroy us. Marcus smiled at her words. Princess, you are learning quickly. Admiral Zareth continued. I order you to escort Marcus and me back to the palace. My father needs to hear what I have learned. This could change everything for our empire. After another pause, Admiral Keth responded. As you command, Princess. Human, you will be welcomed as our guest. As the small convoy began its journey home, Zareth looked at Marcus with new understanding. You were not just saving me from the Korth, were you? She asked. What do you mean? You were also saving me from the fear and misunderstanding of my own people. You knew this would happen. Marcus nodded. Princess, the hardest battles are not always against enemies. Sometimes they are against the fear and prejudice of good people who should be your allies. And how do you win those battles? The same way you win any battle. Show people a better way, and you never give up until they understand. As they traveled toward the Veltari homeworld, Zareth realized that her adventure was far from over. The real challenge was just beginning. Part 5. The legend lives on the Imperial Palace of Veltar was the most beautiful building Princess Zareth had ever seen. But today it felt different. As she walked through the crystal halls beside Marcus, she noticed how the guards stared at him. Some looked curious, others looked afraid. Word had spread quickly about the human who had saved the princess. Marcus, are you nervous? She asked, as they approached the throne room. A little, he admitted. Meeting an emperor is always interesting, but I have learned that most problems can be solved with honest conversation. The massive doors of the throne room opened, revealing a chamber filled with light and beauty. Emperor Thane sat on his crystal throne, surrounded by his advisors and nobles. All of them were staring at Marcus with a mixture of wonder and suspicion. Father, Princess Zareth said, bowing formally, I present Marcus Chen of Earth, the human who saved my life. Emperor Thane was a tall, dignified Veltari, with wise blue eyes. He studied Marcus carefully before speaking. Human, you have done our family a great service. Name your reward. Gold land, titles, whatever you desire, shall be yours. Bowed respectfully but remained standing straight. Your Majesty, I am honored by your offer, but I do not need rewards for doing what was right. This answer surprised everyone in the throne room. The nobles whispered among themselves, "Who would refuse the Emperor's gold? And what do you want?" Emperor Thane asked. "I want to offer something instead of asking for something," Marcus replied. "I want to offer friendship between our peoples." High Advisor Zell, an elderly Veltari with silver skin, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we must be careful. The old records speak of humans as dangerous warriors. This one may be planning some trick." Marcus turned to face the advisor calmly. "Sir, may I ask what those old records actually say about humans?" "They say humans are savage fighters who never surrender, who can survive anything, who adapt to any environment," Advisor Zell recited. "And are those things necessarily bad?" Marcus asked. The question caught the advisor off guard. "Well, no, but Advisor Zell, let me tell you what those records do not say. They do not say that humans are cruel. They do not say we enjoy fighting. They do not say we cannot be trusted." Emperor Thane leaned forward on his throne. "Then what are humans really like?" Marcus thought for a moment. "Your Majesty, humans are teachers. We have learned many hard lessons in our history, and we want to share those lessons with others." "What kinds of lessons?" "We have learned that giving up is the only guaranteed way to fail. We have learned that every problem contains the materials for its own solution. We have learned that working together is always better than fighting alone." Princess Zareth stepped forward. "Father, I have seen these lessons in action. Marcus did not just save me with strength or weapons. He saved me by thinking differently, by seeing solutions where others saw only problems." "Give me an example," the Emperor commanded. Zareth told the story of how Marcus had turned the mining asteroid into a weapon, how he had outmaneuvered the Imperial ships without hurting anyone, how he had solved every challenge through intelligence and creativity rather than brute force. When she finished, the throne room was silent. The nobles looked amazed, and even Advisor Zell seemed thoughtful. "Impressive," Emperor Thane said. "But what do you want from us, human? No one offers friendship without expecting something in return." Marcus smiled. "Your Majesty, humans believe that knowledge shared is knowledge multiplied. We want to learn from you just as much as we want to teach you." "Learn what?" "The Veltari have built a peaceful empire that has lasted for centuries. You have mastered arts and sciences that humans are only beginning to understand. You have created beauty and harmony across many worlds." Marcus gestured to the magnificent throne room around them. "Humans are good at surviving, at fighting, at solving problems. But we are still learning how to build lasting peace. You could teach us that." Emperor Thane stood up from his throne and walked closer to Marcus. "You were saying you want to trade knowledge?" "Our wisdom for your... What would you call it?" "Our determination," Marcus replied. "Our refusal to accept that any problem is unsolvable. Our experience in overcoming impossible challenges." "And how would this work?" Marcus pulled out a small device from his pack. "This is a communication beacon. If you allow it, I can contact my ship and invite a small group of humans to establish an embassy here. We would start with cultural exchanges, shared research projects, training programs." Advisor Zell looked worried. "Your Majesty, we know nothing about their technology, their methods, their true intentions." "That is exactly why we should learn," Princess Zareth said firmly. "Advisor, I have seen what happens when we act from fear instead of wisdom. We almost destroyed the very person who saved my life." Marcus nodded. "Your Majesty, I understand the advisor's concerns. Must be earned, not demanded. I propose we start small. Let me work with your military trainers, your engineers, your problem solvers. Let them see how humans approach challenges. If you like what you see, we can expand the program. If not, I will leave and never return." Emperor Thane considered. This carefully. What would these training programs teach? How to turn disadvantages into advantages. How to improvise solutions with limited resources. How to keep thinking clearly under pressure. How to never give up when the situation seems hopeless. "These are valuable skills," the Emperor admitted. "Yes, Your Majesty. And in return, we want to learn Veltari diplomacy, your peaceful methods of resolving conflicts, your arts and philosophy." Humans are good at war, but we want to become better at peace. General Voss, the Emperor's military commander, stepped forward.
Human.
Can you really teach our soldiers to think like you do? General, every human learns these skills. On Earth, we have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention, when survival depends on finding solutions. People learn to find solutions. But what if our people are not as naturally gifted as humans? Marcus shook his head. General, that is wrong thinking. Intelligence is not about natural gifts. It is about practice, about refusing to give up, about being willing to try new approaches. Princess Zareth looked around the room at all the faces watching this conversation. She could see them beginning to understand what she had learned. Father, she said, I believe this could make our empire stronger, not just militarily, but in every way. Imagine if our people learned to approach every challenge the way Marcus approaches them. Emperor Thane returned to his throne and sat. In thought for several minutes, the entire room waited in silence. Finally, he spoke. Marcus of Earth, I accept your proposal. You may establish a small embassy and begin these cultural exchanges, but I have one condition.
A what?
Condition. Your Majesty, my daughter will oversee this program. She understands humans better than anyone else in our empire. If she approves of your progress, the program will continue. If she has concerns, we will discuss them. Marcus bowed deeply. I am honored. By your trust, Your Majesty, I promise you will not regret this decision. As the formal ceremony ended, Princess Zareth walked with Marcus to the palace gardens. The twin suns of Veltar were setting, painting the sky in beautiful colors. Marcus, what will you teach our people first? She asked. The most important lesson of all, he replied. That the word impossible usually just means no one has figured out how yet. And what will you learn from us? Marcus looked at the peaceful beauty around them, the flowing water, the artistic sculptures, the harmony of the palace design. I want to learn how to build something that lasts. Humans are good at solving immediate problems, but you have built something that brings peace across generations. As they watched the sunset, Princess Zareth realized that this was just the beginning. The legends about human warriors had been true, but incomplete. The real legend was about what happened when humans used their gifts, not for destruction, but for building something better. Soon, the galaxy would know that the greatest human strength was not their refusal to surrender in battle, but their refusal to accept that peace was impossible. The problems could not be solved, that different peoples could not work together. The legend of the Terra warriors would continue, but it would be a new legend, one about humans who taught others to find the strength they never knew they had.